These are the two integrated vent hoods you can get from Ikea for the time being. And being Scandinavian, I like them both. I like when it's discreet and it's sleek. But when it comes to quality, I'm more engineer than Scandinavian. And the problem with the one to the left is the knob you see sitting right there. Because when you look at the reviews for this vent hood in particular, the majority of the one-star reviews, they are saying that that knob is just not great. It will fail. And it cannot be a coincidence that so many buyers of this vent hood are experiencing the same thing. So we don't want that one. No, we want the one to the right, and I think it's a much better vent hood. And of course, we shouldn't be worried about that last review with someone who's saying it's very difficult to install, because that's not going to be an issue for you, because now you have this video. And should you decide to get the one to the left, they actually are installed in pretty much the same way. And let me just demonstrate for you here how it looks when it sits there. I apologize for the greasy fingers on the front of the stainless steel. I know it doesn't look good, but I did not do that. So when it's installed, it sits like this, and you just simply pull out on it, and the vent will start by itself. And then you push back in when you're done with cooking. So I like it a lot. So keep watching if you want to see how I install it. When we're installing one of these integrated vent hoods, we need a special cabinet for that. Ikea has a vent hood cabinet, or whatever they call it. But in this case with my client, he did not get that one. I do not know why, but there was a regular 30-inch wide and 30-inch high wall cabinet. And the difference between these two cabinets is, as you can see on the special one to the left, the shelf or the bottom of the cabinet is sitting up in the cabinet, and on the regular one, the bottom of the cabinet is sitting at the bottom. So that bottom of the cabinet had to be moved up into the cabinet. So that's where I'm starting. Since the purpose of this video is to show you how to install the vent hood, I will go pretty fast over the modification of this cabinet, because there's really nothing to it. The bottom part of that cabinet just have to be sitting further up in the cabinet, and whether it's 14, 15 or 16 inches from the bottom is not that important. You just to make sure that it sits high up in the cabinet so you have enough room for the vent hood. That vent hood is about 11, 12 inches high, so I put mine at 15 inches to be sure that I have enough clearance above the vent hood so I can get my fingers in there when I'm putting on the duct. Remember that the doors that goes on this cabinet are 30 inches high, so whether that shelf sitting inside is exactly at 15, that's not important. We use the opposite side as a template for drilling the holes for the stud screws and the wooden pegs, just like we do when we're modifying a cabinet. And then we just put the cabinet together. It is not difficult. The back panel of the cabinet needs to be cut in two pieces though, because now we have a groove sitting inside at the back, and that means that we cannot have the panel running all the way down. No, it has to be cut. And so you just measure the height from the top down to where you have that shelf or part of the cabinet sitting now, and then you cut your panel accordingly. The lower part of that back panel, I'm not putting that on right now. No, I will keep that for later when the vent hood has been installed. And now we just need to put some nails into that back of the cabinet, and the cabinet is ready for installation of the vent hood. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of this vent hood. I know it means extendable, and clearly that makes a lot of sense. So let's get started on that one. Since I don't install this vent hood very often, I have to admit that I look in the instruction that comes with the vent hood, and I think you should do that too. So in this video, we can do that together. So when I'm doing something or installing something on this vent hood, I will show you the exact same page on the instruction for you to follow along. How about that? When the vent hood is out of the box, the first thing you want to do is take off those filters sitting on the vent hood, because we don't want to damage those, and we need access to the inside of the vent hood. If you're looking at your instruction, you will see that I am doing step 2 before I do step 1, and that's just a coincidence. So I started by putting on those metal brackets inside the cabinet on which the vent hood will be screwed into. And what I found a little bit tricky myself was to see which one, or to find out which one of the holes the bracket has to be secured into. And what you'll see here, it's the uppermost hole where we have a row of 2 holes, the one I have marked right here. It's not the upper hole you see in the picture. That's the one for that long peg screw assembly joint thing we put in when we assemble the cabinet. No, you don't want to put anything in there now. You want to put a screw right in that hole where I have marked with a green ring. So that's what you want to do. That extra screw you will see is because I like to do, a bit extra. So I added another screw that screws directly into the side of the cabinet just to make it stronger. With the brackets in place inside the cabinet, it's time to bring over the vent hood, and I start by putting on that piece of hardware where we connect the duct to the vent hood. And that's fairly easy. You just put in those screws that are provided with the vent hood. Next up is the power cable, and that is really plug and play. We just plug it in. The vent hood is not hardwired. It has a plug at the end of that cable. And it comes with a little plastic clip in order to secure the cable so it doesn't fall out of the vent hood, and you need to add that one too. Since I'm not using the special cabinet for the integrated vent hood, I need to cut a hole in that middle shelf, in that shelf that sits right there in the middle, so the duct can be connected to the vent hood. If you had the original vent hood cabinet, you would not need to do this because there would be a hole already. But no, not me. I have to bring out my oscillating tool and cut a hole. The first thing I do though is I put the vent hood on top of the cabinet. Remember, the cabinet is upside down, so the vent hood will be upside down as well. And then I can bring out a pencil and my measuring tape, and I can measure where I need to cut that hole. When I want to determine where to cut that hole in that shelf for the duct, it's important that the vent hood is sitting at the right position inside the cabinet. That is why I'm looking inside the vent hood from above to see that the holes in the vent hood lines up with the holes in the bracket for securing the vent hood into the bracket. Because if those holes lines up, the vent hood is in the correct position. And then I bring out my measuring tape and I just make sure that it is sitting with the same distance to the front or the back at both ends. And then I'm ready to mark where I want to cut that hole. When the vent hood is sitting exactly where I want it, I can kind of project the circular duct sitting on top of that vent hood, which is now pointing down towards the shelf. And I can project that circle down onto my material I need to cut away. And that's what I'm doing. And when that's all done, I can take away the vent again so I can cut that hole. And with the vent out of the way, I can make a circle based on the marks I just did. And I can bring out my tool and cut away. And when I have cleaned up, I can turn the cabinet around, because now it's time to cut the hole in the cabinet for the duct that is going out of the cabinet and into the ceiling. The position of that hole is naturally depending on where that duct comes out of the ceiling. I'm sorry you cannot see that in this picture, but the duct just comes out of the ceiling. So I just measure from the cabinet sitting to the right and from the wall, and then I mark on my cabinet where that hole needs to be cut. And once again, I cut and clean. Before I install the vent into the cabinet, I want to bring the cabinet over and hang it on the rail to see that everything is working fine, because sometimes you measure wrong, and I don't want to have the vent sitting in there and then have to lift everything up and it doesn't fit. So I do a trial run. I try to see if the cabinet sits on the wall where it should, with the hole in the right position for that duct coming out of the ceiling. And as you just witnessed, it was a big success. So now we're ready to put in the vent. We put the vent on top of the cabinet again, and then we look in the instructions and we see, we have to put in 4 small screws from the inside of the vent into that bracket. And those screws, I don't know what's wrong with Ikea, because they give you a little screw that has a Torx opening, and they give you a Torx adapter to a Phillips. And I'm like, why don't they just give you a little Torx bit like they do with the lights? So if you have installed any under cabinet lights, you have that little Torx bit already. If not, you have to suck it up and you have to deal with that Torx adapter. It will work, but I don't know what they were thinking over there in Sweden. Anyway, you just put 2 screws into each end of the vent hood into the bracket to secure the vent hood. And doing this, gravity is your friend, because gravity will make sure that the vent hood is pressed against the cabinet, because that is important. With the vent hood in place, I am ready to put on the back panel of the cabinet. And if you have the original special vent hood cabinet, you don't have to do that, because that's part of the assembly of the cabinet. But the rest of us who have modified a regular cabinet, we need to put that back panel on right now. And before the panel can slide in, you need to take your little utility knife and you need to cut away some of that white edge band that is sitting at the bottom of that cabinet. Otherwise, you cannot slide it in from that end on. And finally, we'll add some nails to that back panel so it will not fall to the floor when we lift the cabinet up and turn it around. Now we're getting to the part where Ikea said that you need to be 2 people. But since I work alone, I'm 1 people only. But that's why I made that trial run before, because now I know that my cabinet will fit right up there. I just need to add a bit of strength and lift it up, hang it on the rail. And when it's hanging, I can pull in my electrical cable for the electrician, so he can put a receptacle at the end of that one when he's back. The remaining part of the installation, we don't do that before the doors has been put on, and we don't do the final bit before the backsplash has been put into the kitchen, if you will have backsplash installed. So the first thing is the stopper for the vent. So when you push in the vent front, it do not continue any further than the doors. And as you'll see in this instruction, it's clearly self-explanatory. You simply push that piece of metal into the opening up under the hood, and then you push that towards the back of the vent hood when the pull-out part of the vent is sitting flush with the doors. And then you just put in the screw and you tighten the screw. And that's it. And that's how it looks when it's all done. If you need to adjust the height of the pull-out part of the vent hood, there's 2 screws sitting on the inside which you can loosen, and then you can either push it up or pull it down a bit. And that's fairly easy. And you can see the screw right here. So it needs to be parallel to the doors. So clearly, once again, this is something you do when the doors has been installed and adjusted. And the very last thing we do is we add that filler piece towards the wall. And we don't do that before the backsplash is in, if there is any backsplash. In this installation I did, there's no backsplash. So I could put it on right away when the doors and everything else was in. So you just put in 2 screws up under the vent hood. The holes are pre-drilled and you have the screws right at hand with your little Torx adapter bit, which is truly annoying. And then you put up that filler piece and you push it towards the wall and you tighten the screws. And that's it. Installation is complete and you're ready to start cooking.